At the end of the day, it's not about what you have or even what you've accomplished. It's about what you've done with those accomplishments. It's about who you've lifted up, who you've made better. It's about what you've given back. Denzel Washington. Welcome to Inspire Vision. Our sole purpose is to elevate the lives of others and to inspire you to do the same.
Karol, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Doug. Really a pleasure to be here.
Hey, it's great to have you on this show. What I'd love for you to do, and I find that the journey, the story, the background is always so interesting for the people that are listening. What is your story? What is your background? How on earth did you get to this point that you're doing what you're doing? And also, who are you and your background?
Sure. I always say it's a circuitous route. It has lots of twists and turns to it, which I think most people's lives do. But currently, I'll start with where I am currently and track back a little bit. Currently, I'm a consultant and I specialize in confidence and communication for executives who want to be more visible in the workplace. How I got there was an interesting tale. So I was the daughter of a military man, and I moved around quite a bit when I was growing up. And that primed me for connecting to people or learning how to connect to people. I had to figure out how to make friends with people wherever I went. And from that, I became fascinated with people. I just like them. And fast forward, I went to school and I got a degree in psychology and communication because I, again, am very interested in how we connect to ourselves and then how we connect to other people. And I came to New York City, and at first I pursued an acting career because that's where I thought I was going to land. But soon I realized that what I was very much interested in was sharing my knowledge, not playing a part in a play. So I went to school, and that's where I got the degree in psychology and communication, and then I got a master's in social work. I opened a private practice and was in private practice as a therapist for a while. And then I had the bug to be in front of people. Again, not as a performer, but just I liked that whole idea. And I started to go out and speak about psychological issues, stress, depression, anxiety, where it all comes from. And people started to approach me about teaching them to present. And I had never really done that before. And organically, I started to build this other career of helping people communicate what they do in a more confident way. So that's the whole journey condensed.
Okay, great. And great story. And so my question is, obviously you're working people in business now on how to communicate. And as you say, how, if there's giving talks and so forth, how to present themselves. How does that apply to the everyday individual that may not be in that level of business?
Well, the way it applies is that we still need to be able to have a sense of confidence and then a sense and an ability to be able to communicate our confidence no matter what situation that we're in. Maybe we're dating for the first time in a long time. We want to be able to talk about ourselves from our own personality, not anybody else's. We want to be able to share ourselves and have the confidence to do that. Maybe you're a parent and you are involved in the PTA and you have some ideas that would make things better for your children in school. You want to be able to communicate that. Or maybe you want to get involved in your community and you have some ideas how to make your community better. You want to be able to communicate your ideas because you can have great ideas, but if you are nervous or shy, which we all are to some degree, but if you can't get the words out, if you can't get your ideas out, it's not going to help you feel like you're advocating for yourself and other people.
And what percentage would you say that at least the people you know and in general, what percentage of us actually hold back on what we really want to say because of that lack of confidence?
I couldn't even give it a percentage. It's interesting. I've never been asked that before, but I would say it's situation dependent because I talk a lot when I go out and speak about confidence that we could be confident in one area, and then we have this area which I call our confidence kryptonite, where either it's a certain person or personality type or a situation that causes us to hold back. So I think we all have times in our life when we can't speak up the way that we want to. If it's an ongoing problem, that's when I think it requires some introspection and some self-study.
Well, and you talk about personality types, so that just triggered something for me. Um, do you use do you use personality types, and do you find that there are specific personality types? And by the way, I'm very familiar with the DISC, the advanced DISC, not just the general one. Do you find that different personality types kind of have a proclivity either to be able to, share their thoughts and so forth, where others tend to be a little bit more shy or a little bit less confident? And does it have to do with personality?
Well, it's interesting. I don't use personality types. I've never done any kind of pathology diagnosing. Even when I was a therapist, I generally sat with who was in front of me. Of course, I studied it in school, but it was really like, what am I getting from this person? And what I tell people when I coach them is there's a certain half, and I'm generalizing here, but there's a certain half of the population that can say what they mean and they can jump in and express their opinion. And then there's another half of the population who require a bit more of a launching pad to get into situations where they're expressing their opinion. Now, the first group, that standard has been the one that many of us have been held to. That's the way we should all be. We should just speak up and speak out. But that's not true. This other group of people who have many, many important things to say and great insights need to embrace and accept that they can converse and share their opinion using a different style, and it is just as legit.
Okay, and I'm gonna hit this just a little bit, okay, and I don't disagree, but what my thoughts are is, you've got your extrovert left brain. They have no problem saying what they think. It's just the way it is. I think there's a smaller percentage than that, but anyway, and then you have the left brain analytic person who, like the doctors and so forth that are just, really focused on things, and they like to be kind of left alone and just analyze and so forth. Whereas you get over to the other side, which are the right brain, which tend to be more friendly and love to get along with people and chat, 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 and all of that. But what I find also is that they seem to be ruled by emotions a little bit more. And do you find that it's those internal emotions and even sometimes subconscious emotions that are limiting their confidence to be able to say what they want to say? Or what are the factors that are causing that lack of confidence in your mind?
So the ones, if you're saying specifically people who are very emotionally impulsive, that quote unquote impulsive,
Yeah.
who either get overwhelmed emotionally when they have to share something, or they are reactive in a very emotional way. Is that what you're asking about that?
Exactly. Yeah.
And now I forgot the question. What was the question again as we clarified that?
What is causing the lack of confidence in your experience? What is it that causes this lack of confidence for individuals who really want to be able to speak their mind or speak their truths, and yet they're not, and they don't?
Sure. I have found that either it's early conditioning and messaging, that if you have been told or you learned by listening that you were a certain way, that who you were was not a good enough person, that tends to have people hold back. They feel that if they were to express themselves, they might be shamed or blamed. And then they carry that into professional environments or into their community. So it's not just, oh, I'm a little nervous about sharing my opinion. It's, I'm afraid that if I speak my truth, I'm going to get in return, fill in the blank, whatever you received growing up, whether it was criticism or yelling or being told to be quiet. And that causes people to start to shut down and feel a deeper insecurity. Because confidence for me is really a self-esteem issue. If you don't feel good about yourself, you're not putting yourself out in any way. And I feel like that early messaging is what causes people to hold back.
So when you're working with a client that you can obviously see that that is occurring, how do you help them to actually get in and do that deep inner awareness and work that most of us really are, in some cases, afraid to do?
Well, I always ask a couple of questions like, are you aware of why you're holding back? I mean, since I'm not acting as a therapist in those situations, but having the therapeutic training really, really helps. And in a coaching situation, I'm not crossing those modalities. Coaching is coaching, therapy is therapy, though of course they dovetail.
They intersect, yeah.
That's
intersect.
right. I always believe that though you should know your scope of practice. If I'm a therapist now, I'm a therapist now. If I'm a coach now, I'm a coach now. But to get to your question, so I'll ask a couple of questions. Are you aware? If you're not, sometimes people are aware specifically about childhood stuff. Some people have shared with me cultural stuff because I coach people from different countries and they're aware of the cultural messaging about being seen. And then from there, I really then offer strategies and techniques for them to practice. And then we talk about it and then we practice it again. So it's what is it? And then how do we move forward with it? And then a lot of discussion of how did that feel? I felt good, I felt bad, I felt nervous. What do you think would help? So it's a lot of conversation and attunement, as you know, which is what helps people move forward.
Well, and as you talk about that, you talk about strategies of how to move forward and so forth. Do you really delve into that subconscious stuff? And as you then develop the strategies for them and help them to, develop strategies within themselves, do you find that that tends to go away? Or have they just kind of outweighed the other part of it, or do they find that they actually find peace and let go of those internal beliefs and experiences that they had as children or otherwise?
Over time, certainly they do. I mean, sometimes I will work with someone over a long period of time, an executive. I'll do a contract and I really see it, which is the pleasure of coaching when you're applying strategies. What I think, because my whole background is somatically trained, I'm a big body-mind person. So I have training as a body-oriented therapist. And you probably have seen this as well. You can see when it clicks. You can see when someone just relaxes and or lights up. And you can also see when there is that, I don't want to go any further. I don't want to go any further here. So we don't. That'll be for another session. I'll take them to that point and then move on from there. But I have seen people, their face opens up, their posture changes. And then because I record sessions, if it's a presentation session, I record sessions. I then say, look at this. How you felt about yourself on the inside is actually not what's being reflected on the outside. That's also a great tool for them.
Wow. So you talk about the body-mind relationship and the body-mind intelligence. We talk about IQ, we talk about emotional intelligence. This is the first time I've heard about body-mind intelligence. Could you share what that is?
Certainly. I was trained and experienced myself a somatic type of therapy, which is based on the belief and theory that we not only process trauma and stress in the mind, but we also process it through the body. And that over time, if we don't process that stress, if it's not released, it shows up in psychosomatic symptoms, such as I had a client who had tremendous jaw pain, like just a lot of pain. It caused her headaches, went to the dentist, nothing wrong. Nothing wrong.
Laugh, but keep telling the story. I'll come in afterwards.
Nothing wrong. What it was the clenching of the teeth and the holding back of anger or sadness. And as we started to explore that area and the emotional release happened, and it took time, the headaches and the jaw tension went away. So that's what I mean. So on one level, it's an emotional, the body's an emotional processing machine, so to speak, but also that brain-gut connection is a very strong connection, which is why sometimes we feel like, I don't think that's a good situation, whereas to the brain on paper, it looks perfectly fine. If we can learn to get those two in alignment, brain and gut, great resource.
Well, and I laugh because I am a retired dentist. I guess you didn't know that.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And I used to treat people with that jaw pain. And for me, when they would come in, and of course, if you're not familiar with generally lately, it's like, well, doctor, I have TMJ. I really have pain. And I'm looking at him going, no, you have two. You have one on the left and you have one on the right. So now tell me, what are your symptoms? And of course, I wish I had talked to you way back when, because I had never thought at that time about the emotional aspect of that. I looked strictly at the neuromuscular and skeletal aspect of that, which again, we were able to help and resolve, but we had to go into literally the deep reason why. We had to go into the diagnosis of what's really causing this. Whereas a lot of dentists say, oh yeah, I have TMJ, you got to get operated. And it's like, you know.
So did you discover, would they say to you, I've been under a lot of stress, or I'm grinding my teeth, and you would explore why that was happening?
What for me, what I found is they're driving, for many of them, the reason they're grinding their teeth is because the relationship between the muscles and the nerves and the jaw itself was not in balance. And as we got that in balance and then started to hit some of those muscular areas that were causing the headaches and so forth with either injections or whatever, it went away. But there were some that didn't. And like I say, it would have been wonderful to talk to you way back when, because then I could have said, all right, it's time for you to see a therapist and let's figure out what's going on here.
Right. And I am one of those people. Sometimes it's physical and that's it. I'm not always like, oh, it has to have some psychological root to it. But if you've tried physical things and it's not going away, why not give it a try and see if there's something underneath that pain? I always think of the famous author Judith Herman, and she wrote a book called Trauma and Recovery. And one of the things, if I'm remembering correctly, in that book is that people who experience trauma often have stomach issues, not based on acid reflux, though of course over time, if you're stressed, your acid reflux is going to rise. But they were trying to treat it. They would go to doctors and try to treat the stomach physically, when in reality, there was this emotional component, and both can be addressed.
Well, and that was my point. And it's so interesting that, you get on, the doctors will put you on medication because you have some kind of physical ailment. And as you probably know, and I've certainly experienced in all my interviews with people and some of the personal stuff that I've gone through, that emotions affect the health of individuals.
Absolutely.
And so often, all they do is they go in and start taking the meds, which causes all sorts of other side effects, rather than really looking at what the emotions are that perhaps are creating that.
That's right. And sometimes because that emotional trauma is so strong, it tips the body into a physical state, which has to be addressed as well. But it's I think that the dual approach, if things aren't changing, is going to give people the most empowerment.
Well, I agree. And I think what I've seen is a lot of times when people work on the emotions, the physical goes away.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
you talk about stress, and obviously medically, stress creates that higher level of cortisol, which causes all sorts of issues
Right.
with our bodies. So I know you talk about stress. What are the three key areas of stress?
So there is first of all, stress can be good stress. And that's sometimes think stress is the bad word, but there can be good and bad stress. So good stress might be, oh, I'm buying a home for the first time, or having a child for the first time, or I'm going back to school, whatever it is. And then the bad stress can be shows up as the isms: workaholism, alcoholism, substance abuse, gambling issues, that when stress gets to the level where there's a constant state of anxiety from different sources and you don't know how to manage it, you're going to find, I call it, it's a way to self-soothe. It doesn't serve you in the end, but you try to figure out a way to get through that stress by having a couple of drinks at night, or shopping, or going to a casino, or taking some kind of substance to do exactly what you said, to lower the cortisol, the stress response from the nervous system. So stress can come from work, it can come from relationships, it can come from a political environment, election season, it can come from what's happening with the environment. And it's really about learning how to get some detachment from those situations so you can function in your life.
Well, and as you talk about stress, and of course, as I shared with you, I just got back from Thailand, and I spent 9 months over there, and
Wow.
it was fascinating to me because once I get there, I tend to be that analytical individual. That's why I knew what a dentist is, and well, not necessarily, but when I started really researching out, I just wanted to understand what is it, because I would go around the different areas, and here are these people that are dirt poor. I mean, if they're lucky, they may make $300 to $400 a month, maybe, and yet you don't see all the emotions and junk that's going on, but I do see outwardly the sense of peace and the calmness, and they seem to be at peace with themselves. And as I started to study that a little bit more, I recognized that in 95% of them are Buddhists, that Buddha talked about suffering, stress, that type of thing, and how we can achieve the point where we don't experience that anymore. That's, in my mind, exactly what you're doing when we talk about confidence, is how do you help someone to get to the point where that stress is not deleting their confidence and allowing them to really speak their truth, speak their minds when they would like to.
Absolutely. And it's that, Buddhism, and I don't study Buddhism, but I know that it's all about getting that sense of detachment from suffering. That doesn't mean you don't care, doesn't mean you won't contribute, but you are not being pulled underwater by the overall suffering and pain in the world. And so when I work with people, I have them, whether it's in a coaching session or in a group session, to say, it's that classic, what's the worst case scenario? What would happen if you forgot where you were in your presentation, or you started to speak up in a meeting and you lost your way? Because that's the big fear, like, oh my gosh, I've got to be perfect or say it wonderfully. And when you dismantle the irrational fear that's probably based on an old experience, when you really dismantle it, poke holes in it, and people go, oh, I guess I wouldn't be yelled at or berated the way I was as a child. Because I'll say to them, if someone were to do that to you, you'd had a lot more options than you did as a child. You'd be able to get up, you'd be able to walk out, you'd be able to go, what's going on here? You don't have to take things the way you did when you were in a powerless position in the past. And people just need to be reminded that they have a sense of autonomy, that they have a sense of empowerment, and that the world, it's going to sound funny, is not against them in the way they might think the world is, to varying degrees.
So it has a lot to do with their perception of the world.
Absolutely. It's perception. That's that self-esteem route to confidence. If you don't have a good sense of that you are valuable and that you're a good person, and that's giving your power away to other people. And then they have all the power to dictate how your day is going, your career is going, and your relationship is going.
Well, and we're talking about that internal confidence crusher, but I know that there are external confidence crushers, and I'd love for you to talk about that, and then maybe we'll chat about how do you overcome that too, and how do you deal with that?
Sure. Confidence crushers are the people who say and do things when you are at your happiest. So, for example, let's say you, in the workplace, we'll use that one as the first one. You come into your regular group of friends that you hang out with, and you say, I've just gotten promoted. People who are on your side will be like, fantastic. A confidence crusher will say, oh, look at you. Guess you're going to leave me behind when you rise the corporate ladder, in a very sarcastic, teasing way. And then if you respond to it, oh, no, that's not true. Oh, I was only kidding. How many times have we heard that?
Right.
Not a good thing. Again, we have to look at, why would someone in your happiest moment want to pierce that with teasing? Which is that kind of teasing is different than the kind of teasing you have with your friends who love you or your family who love you. I'm not putting down teasing, but that kind of response is someone who's a confidence crusher. Or you go to share with a friend that you're starting a new business. I'm starting a new business. I've decided to quit my job. I've saved up money. And they go, wow, in this environment, I wouldn't do that. I mean, your chances of success are pretty bad. The immediate negative response is for coming from a confidence crusher. Usually that response is from someone who's jealous and thwarted in their own ambition. So it's interesting to, again, think, why would my friend respond out of the gate with that negativity? Again, it's different than someone saying to you, hey, Doug, great idea. Sounds like terrific. Can I ask you a couple of questions? Or I want to explore that with you or challenge you. That's a very different response. When someone shares good news with us, unless they've told us that, they found a bag of money outside of a bank, I don't know, we should usually respond with happiness. And then the final one is confidence crushers who question everything that you do in a critical way. Well, I've decided I'm going to get married to so and so. Really? What about this? And what about that? Do they earn enough money? Are you going to give up your place? Why would you do that at this point in your life? So instead of oh, that's fantastic, I'd love to hear more. And then if you hear some red flags, you can question. But again, confidence crushers come from a place of low self-esteem.
And and here's the other question, how do you help people to understand that it's nothing about them, but rather it's about the confidence crusher and whatever emotional issues he's dealing or she's dealing with?
I think it's that detachment that we're talking about. First of all, you're like, ooh, that doesn't feel good when that person says that. To really, and sometimes this comes from, you have to step away in order to go, why did my colleague at work respond so negatively? And sit and think, is that their usual response to the world? Are they threatened by me achieving? Why is that? You don't have to fix it, but to take some time to think and to really affirm for yourself that someone responding negatively to good news, there's something off there.
When I was going through my coaching certification, the fellow brought up something. He says, in relationships, this is what you should do, but don't ever do it. And it's like, okay, he says, when you're in a situation where, as you're talking about, someone is being unkind, is a confidence crusher, he says, the question you want to ask is, so what emotions came up that make you feel that way within yourself? And he says, you don't want to do that or you're going to get a divorce in a relationship. but the reality is you can do that in your mind. And if you have gotten to the point where you have enough confidence, that when someone does that, you can think to yourself, all right, I wonder what challenges have you had in your life? What emotions are coming up within you that you would actually do that to a friend or
That's right.
otherwise?
And you can, because people say to me, well, what do I do in the moment? You can, I would say, hand it back. So I come in and I say, oh, I just got a raise. I'm going to be promoted as a manager. I guess you're going to leave us all behind. Silence. Or you could say, what do you mean? Hand it back. Ask them, what do you mean? Well, it seems like, you're just going ahead. Yeah. Aren't you happy for me? Like, challenge it in the moment. So that's one thing if you want to practice that. Or you could say, we'll see. Oh, I've got to take a call, and get out of the energy. You don't always have to take on things immediately. So the choice is to engage by handing it back. The choice is, if you know the person well, to say, Doug, that's kind of a strange response to me telling you something that's making me happy. Can I ask you why? Oh, it was a joke. Well, I have to tell you, it's not really funny to me. Oh, you're so sensitive. And again, how you're responding to me is kind of strange. What's going on? Or you do the quick, well, we'll see if the corporate ladder takes me high and I got to go. I have an appointment. So engage, explore, or get out.
And how many people do you find, because of whatever subconscious limiting beliefs they have, tend to surround themselves with confidence crushers rather than surrounding themselves with those positive responses?
Great question. So many people do. And until they start to become aware of, this energy is very similar to the energy I grew up with. So, for example, in my first book, I share the story of a colleague who gave up a successful career in finance, was thriving because she wanted to become a nutritionist. That was her passion. And she had a parent who was like, why are you doing this? You have a great job. Why would you take that risk? Again, the parent had fear and was projecting it onto my client. And so my client said, I'm doing it. My colleague said, I'm doing it. And she achieved a registered dietitian degree. The first person she wanted to call was that parent who had a negative response the whole way. And we had a discussion because we were friendly at that point. Like, why do you want to do that? How about filling up with people who are really genuinely happy for you before you make that call? So we tend to recreate subconsciously actually, family dynamics. We just tend to do it. We end up with versions of our caretakers, mother, father, grandmother, aunt, whoever it is, whoever raised us. We tend to recreate those dynamics in our relationships, both the positive qualities and the negative ones.
Well, and as I was doing different, studies and so forth, when I went back to business school, and it was very much on behavioral approaches in many respects, one of the things that came out was, when you have an environment that is not uplifting, you need to disconnect. And that can be really tough, particularly if it's family members, if it's parents, if it's brothers, if it's sisters, or even in work. And I'm sure where you're working in the corporate community, how many times do you find that there's a culture there that is affecting your client to the point where they really need to disconnect and maybe even move on to a different job or whatever that happens to be?
That's right. Change what you can. If you can make some changes, if you can take it on, if you can say to that person, even if they are superior in the sense of their role, hey, something's going on here. Can we talk it through? But you're right. If it is not changeable, you have to separate, or else we're talking about the stress. You'll start to get overwhelmed by the stress, and it'll affect you body, mind, and spirit.
Well, so as we talk about that authentic communication, let's define that. What is authentic communication, and how do we actually not only experience it, but do it?
I believe the first step is accepting yourself as this valuable person, because once that's in place, all other things flow. Whether you make a mistake, whether you have a success, if you feel I'm coming from the best place possible, I didn't mean to hurt my colleagues' feelings, I didn't mean to hurt my romantic partner's feelings. I did, but I'm really a good person. It's not because I'm horrible. You can then learn to express, like a gate comes off. You can then say things like, I really messed up. I really messed up, and I'm so sorry. Please accept my apology. Let's work it through. So authentic communication comes from having an authentic sense of self. And then how you do it. Remember, people don't have to reach that standard of just being the most gregarious person in the room. They can be a quiet person and still speak authentically because they believe that what they have to say will contribute to the conversation.
And sometimes if you really have that confidence, you learn not to say anything in that particular environment.
Very, very true. Pick up the vibe in the room, right? This is not a good place to step in. Very true. That's that trust.
Yes, and as you're working with people, and there's different words for it, that inner confidence, that divine within. How do you help people that have gone through all of that trauma and literally have that belief system that I'm not good enough, I'm really no good, blah, blah, blah? How do you help them to understand that the goodness literally is there innately within them, and that they can go from that perspective rather than anything else?
One of the simplest, yet it is the hardest exercise that I give to people, simple in what I ask them to do, but hard for them to do, is an acknowledgement exercise. And I will say to them, for the next week or 2 weeks, I want you to track every compliment that comes your way, from the large ones to the small ones. So that could be, a large one could be, wow, you really gave a great presentation. It's very effective. A small one could be, thanks, Mom, great spaghetti, whatever it is. Or someone saying to you, you look great in that blouse, or nice tie. Whatever it is, track it. Now, so that seems easy, and then people will reluctantly and will do it because the biggest thing, Doug, that I've seen is people tend to dismiss compliments. People whose self-esteem is not in place will be like, yeah, well, yeah, but, yeah, not as good as so-and-so, whatever it is. The hard thing is then to share it either with me or another person. That's when people feel, ooh, am I allowed to do that? Am I allowed to share with Doug that I got a compliment at work? Can I share with my best friend that my date told me it was the best date ever because of how nice I was? It's the permission to first accept the compliment and then share it.
I love it. So you've written some books, and I think it's the last one was Worried Sick, or is that your latest book?
Yes, latest a
Okay.
while back. Yes, I'm working on
Okay.
another one, but that's my
Okay.
latest.
So the Worried Sick, and I know that there's more to that name than just that. That's all I wrote down. What is that book all about, and why did you write it?
I wrote it because, again, it was out of my fascination with how worry does affect us in mind, body, and spirit. That there is such a thing as chronic worrying, where it becomes a defense against the world. So a chronic worrier is someone who checks the weather forecast, is the one who plans for all contingencies on a trip. Again, there are positive parts to that, but they can't relax. They can't be like, well, if it rains, it rains. Or I don't have to keep watching the most gloom and doom news broadcast just in case. Chronic worriers are just in case people. And it can start to wear them down because they are living life with a caution that can hold them back from their own dreams and desires.
A little OCD.
Yes, yes. And again, chronic worry is a way to manage anxiety. That's what's driving it. It's an anxiety. Are there times when being a good worrier is a good thing? Absolutely. But if it's keeping you from going for that promotion or dating or moving because you're so afraid of the what ifs, that's something you have to start looking at. Or as we talked about earlier, you have the jaw or the stomach or the shoulders, or you're so physically tense you can't enjoy your life.
Well, and it's tough. I talk to my kids and myself about new adventures. And I think that that's the big challenge is, oh, here's a new adventure. I'd really love to get involved in it. And yet, as you say, then comes the worry, then comes the stress, then comes the confidence lack of, and it can stop you from actually doing something new as an adventure that may be an incredible experience.
That's right. And so with a chronic worrier, one of the best ways to unhook from that is to disrupt it. So if you find yourself, oh, I'm going to plan a trip. We're going to go to the Grand Canyon. Oh, what if it rains? What if the canyon floods? What if someone falls over the edge? I mean, all of this doom and gloom. When that starts to go on, you have to disrupt it. Get up, get out, wash your dishes, play a game on the computer, go outside. You can get your mind to focus on something else so that rumination doesn't drive you to never leave your house.
All right. And time runs by so fast. So we're running out. But what I'd love for you to do is share with the audience, if there was a message that you wanted to share with them, a short message, what would that be?
It really has to do with that confidence is something that can be relearned. We usually start out with it, but it can be relearned. And one of the ways that you can learn it again is to focus on yourself and to start doing things like acknowledging the compliments that you get during the week, maybe even working with someone who can help you and remind you that you're a good person. But start with you first. Clear out all of the blocks that are stopping you from being the person that you want to be. It will pay off.
I love it. So how do people find you, Karol?
Sure, you can go on my website, which is Karol with a K, KarolWard.com. And on my website, I actually have a tab for some free resources that people can download. One is a goal setting download, one is a stress reduction audio download set to original music, and one is a quick presentation tips checklist. Just you can access those there.
And do you work with clients outside of the organizational community, with individuals?
I do. I primarily work with people who are trying to expand their small business, and I help them figure out what's in the way from them becoming more visible. So it's a very strategic approach to what's in the way, and then here's the actions that you can take to become the thought leader that you want to be.
I love it. Well, Karol, thanks so much. This has been a great discussion.
Great talking with you.
I love it. And folks, thanks for listening. Hope you've enjoyed it and look forward to having you join us again soon. This is Dr. Doug saying namaste.